Hi guys, I'm Kira and welcome to my studio. Today we will be talking about tips on improving your coloring with alcohol markers. The first thing that I want you to know is that paper matters. Some markers appear darker or lighter on different papers. No texture papers like Bristol and marker paper will provide smooth surfaces for markers to glide across and blend effortlessly. Textured papers, like watercolor paper and mixed media paper, will not only suck up your ink, but make it harder to create smooth blending. I like textured papers, but I don't always recommend it to people. This Blick sketchbook has just a tiny bit of grit, so I can still get the texture that I like without using all of my ink. You're just going to have to play around with different papers and find out which paper you like. Now, me personally, I like to line and then color with my markers. This leads me to my second point, alright? And that is going to be make sure your line art is dry. Please allow the line art to dry. Do not immediately color after inking because you will smudge that ink. You will see bleeding. I promise you, especially if you're using a light color. It's going to happen inevitably. I like to wait at least 10 minutes before I start coloring it in. The angel on the right was actually lined a day before I started coloring this girl on the left. But I wanted to show you guys a exact comparison as to what I suggest you do and what I don't suggest you to do when using alcohol markers. So, the demon or Oni girl on the left, she is going to be my example of what not to do, while the girl on the right is going to be my example of what I think would work for you better. And although I want this to be a learning experience for you all, I still want to have a pretty decent drawing at the end of this. So I'm actually going to be correcting my mistakes as I go. Now, what you see that I did was when the lighter yellow color smeared and was dark in that corner, all I did was take a kind of brownish color that was somewhat in the same family and made dark shadows basically. So I intentionally gave the shirt darker shadows in order to hide the bleeding that was there as you saw previously. Now I am going to go ahead and ink the rest of her so that she has time to fully dry now that we've learned from our first mistake. Quick fun fact, by the way, although the girl on the left is supposed to be the representation of what not to do with alcoholic markers. Did I just say alcoholic markers? Man, I don't know why, but every single time I'm talking about alcohol-based markers, I freaking call them alcoholic markers. I don't know what's up with that. But as I was saying, although the girl on the left is supposed to represent what not to do with alcohol-based markers, I actually like how she turns out better. Now, like I said, I will be correcting the mistakes as I go along, but you will see exactly, you know, the things that I do, the mistakes that I make. And I am purposely making them for a learning experience. But when I correct them and everything's all said and done, I actually like how she turns out better, which I just think is funny. I'm probably going to confuse everybody with my thumbnail because she looks completely fine in the end, but I know I'm going to have do this, not that, and have the not that arrow point at her, and everyone's probably going to be like, what? But she looks fine. So everyone's going to be confused until you get to this part of the video where I'm going to tell you guys that I will be fixing her up. So yeah, and hopefully you guys will actually learn if you do make these mistakes, you'll learn how to fix them since you're watching me fix them at the same time. That is my hope because I've been using alcohol-based markers for a long time now, so I think I have a pretty decent handle on them. So I want this video to be as helpful as possible. So, if you guys think that this was a pretty decent and helpful video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and a like, maybe share with another artist friend who may be struggling with the blending aspects of alcohol-based markers. And no, you do not need the specific brand name Copic, because every time I post a picture on my Instagram, someone DMs me, hey, what Copic color is that? Or something around those lines. And Copics are not the only alcohol-based markers. You can get some pretty smooth blending with other markers, other alcohol markers. So, just letting you know. Right now I'm doing my infamous undertone technique. It's not really infamous at all. And if it is, it's certainly not by me. Plenty of people use this technique. But if you want to understand what I am doing, please make sure you click the link here where I go into further detail explaining why I am using blue, red, and yellow as undertones for my skin. And if you're wondering about the supplies that I am using, please check the description. Listed below are all the supplies that I use in this video. And now we're finally moving on to coloring with our alcohol markers once again. Now, I'm purposely trying to kill off some of my older markers or markers I just don't like. Chameleon. But I know which markers are dying, such as this red one. And this brings me to my next point. Always test out your markers. Like I just said, I knew that this red marker was old and dry. As you can see, it's so streaky. But I'm going to go ahead and fix that by taking a red that's a similar color and just layering right on top of that as soon as possible. And you're going to see that it basically blends and smoothens everything out. Not perfectly, of course, but still pretty darn clean for what it was at first. I know you saw them streaks, boy. Or girl, or whatever you identify as. I ain't trying to assume your gender or anything. But, as I was saying, that is exactly why you want to test out your markers, because Lord knows there's nothing worse than just finishing a beautiful drawing that you're in love with and you know exactly how you want to color it, and you go and grab that color and you start laying it down, and then it's all streaky and dried up and it's squeaking as you try to make it glide across the paper because it don't have no more ink in it, and it's ruined everything, and you wish that you were a digital artist because this is the kind of crap that drives us traditional artists crazy. There is nothing worse than that feeling. So just avoid it by testing out the marker beforehand. You can easily just do a couple strokes and see how much ink is in there. Next thing I have to say is don't jump around. Do not jump all over the place. And I'm going to show you on her upper back what I mean by that. So as you can see, I color this little section here, and then I go and color this section here, and I color that section there, and now I realize I have to color that whole section that color, so then I just blend it, and as you can see that it's lighter in that area in the middle, and it should all be the same uniform color. What's going to happen is if you jump around, the first area is going to dry, which causes a layer, and then you go back on top of it, and now there's a shadowy effect because you've already made a layer there. You know what I'm saying? So just don't jump around. Try to start in one corner and finish smoothly to the next. If you don't want any harsh transitions, then please do not jump around. Next thing is to be mindful of strokes, okay? If you're trying to create a flat layer, you do not want to blend in a linear motion like an up and down motion, because I promise you there's a good chance that you will create a streaky texture, as you can see here in this close-up. You see all the streaks there? What you want to do is use a circular motion, and that will make things a lot smoother. And as you can see, I just went on top and did that, and it kind of blended out pretty smoothly. Now, a streaky texture can actually be nice if you're trying to do like a wood grain or fur texture. I've actually purposely colored in a streaky way to make such texture. And while we're on the background, please, for the love of God, don't be afraid to use the chisel nib. I don't know why artists on YouTube like to act like it's taboo, but it is really your best friend in covering large spaces, okay? Also, if you're using a really juicy marker, then please just don't color straight to the line, because that ink is going to seep its way there by itself. If you color straight to the line, that ink will seep past the line. You get what I'm saying there? It's going to seep further than what you wanted. So you don't have to color straight to the line if you have a juicy marker. So as you can see, the girl on the left is basically completed, and even though I've made a lot of mistakes on her, I feel like she came out pretty well, especially for a little sketch in my sketchbook. But now we still have more tips to get through, okay? As you can see, for the angel girl, I started with a light yellow for her shirt, and then I'm going on top of that with a darker yellow, and then an even yellow that's close to an orange, and I'm blending in layers. I like to take 3 colors that are in the same family and use the lightest color as the first layer and the darkest color as the last layer, and blend with the middle tone color, and that will provide a smooth transition. Now, I also want to tell you guys not to have such a heavy hand all the time while you're using a marker, especially if you're using a brush marker, because the more pressure you put on it, the more ink is going to come out. So you want to be aware of that. Now, what I like to do, especially on jeans, is to have a heavy pressure where the shadows are going to be, and release the pressure of my hand where I want the shadows to blend out, or transition out, excuse me. I had something in my throat real quick. But yeah, so where the shadows start, have heavy pressure, and then release, and you'll have a gradient effect, which is why so many people love the brush tip on alcohol-based markers. It's all in the flick of the wrist. Look at the wrist. I'm sorry, now I can't say that phrase without thinking about that song, but it truly is in the flick of the wrist. As you use alcohol-based markers more, you will be able to get that down packed, I promise. Last tip is to just think of them as watercolors with the wet on wet method. If you want a smooth transition, then make sure that the first layer of ink is still wet before you go ahead and add the second layer of ink. You have to work quick with this medium, but that's why I love alcohol-based markers. And that's it for today. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye!